Ooh, that's my air conditioner is loud.
All right, family. Good evening. Um, Thank you, Javon, for let me just hit this real quick. This should get okay, hold on. Save changes. Okay, hold on. Now we good. Okay, let me go do a few things real quick. Thank you, Javon, for joining me for this discussion. You know me, I really want to be talking about things that's happening in our community, but I always remembered your PowerPoint. And I remember when you did this presentation, this was years ago, but it always made such sense to me. It just made a lot of sense. And then considering what happened here in California, around reparations, I was like, I gotta bring Jay on to kind of, because it's, I mean, we're saying reparations, but it's so much more than just reparations. Thank you first of all for joining me, Jay.
Of course.
Yeah. So,
I'm happy
question.
to be here.
Thank you. Give me a little bit of your background. Who is Javon Muhammad? Who are you? Where are you from?
Well, I'm from California, but I'm out here in Louisiana now. So California is my home. A few years ago, I bought a farm out here in Louisiana. I was recruited to work here initially because I am a midwife, but for the last decade, I've been running federally qualified health centers. So I was recruited to come out here and run a center. And shortly after that, COVID and a major hurricane came back to San Francisco, and I'm just making it back to the farm in Louisiana. But you know, I just feel like I'm someone who has been using my talent to achieve justice in the way that my talent can, in all that I do since I can remember. I mean, we met working. We met doing this
That's right.
work together, and that was 20 years ago. So, um, I'm just me. So that's to say, I'm just doing my best.
So, Javon, what made you buy a farm?
Well, um, I could talk about that for a whole show, but I'm just gonna give the quick version, and that is, I am committed to growing what I eat because I am acknowledged that we are right now under food warfare. I'm gonna say we're being dosed. I come again. I'm a midwife. I come from the healthcare industry, and I have watched the wellness be taken out of wellness, like the wellness leave healthcare, and instead be replaced with pharmaceuticals. And I just became very frustrated with the idea of not having any other tools other than medicine in our arsenal at the clinics that we would use to poison people, particularly poor people and Black people. And so, for myself and for my community, I'm committed to growing food, healthy food, to making healthy products, and to being part of the solution. In my opinion and in my expertise and experience, I think that what is happening to us through food, the war has been waged through food, is one of the most significant challenges that we're having now. Food affects our mental health and our physical health. And if you look at our community, our children are constantly sedated and diagnosed with ADHD or anxiety or depression. And when that's not happening, we're coming in with hypertension, with high cholesterol, with blood pressure. All of these conditions are driven by poor food, the wrong food. And even when we do try to eat the right food, it does not carry the same nutrition that it used to have before we grew it, in good soil and without pesticides. And so the fact that our children come in not in their right mind every day, and the only thing we do is to make them lifelong pharmaceutical patients, to me feels a lot like eugenics. It feels a lot like warfare. The fact that we can't think our way out of the challenges, we are known as being resilient people. That has been what's kept us alive. the fact that we're losing our resilience because we eat ultra processed foods every day and we don't have an answer for that drove me to the farm.
What is eugenics? Because I want to make sure in case somebody don't know what that word means.
Eugenics is murder basically. It's like a plan to kill us. Like um the founder of Planned Parenthood was someone who practiced eugenics. She did not want black babies to be born. That was a known fact about her. So she practiced eugenics, birth control, abortion, those things could be known as eugenics because they stop us from reproducing ourselves. So for me, another example in my work, I remember having a conversation with a OB team that I managed at one of the FQHCs. Every time I was trying to gather them together, someone was in a surgery doing a hysterectomy. And when I questioned them about it, why is it that we do so many hysterectomies? They told me it was a cultural thing. Here where we are, it's just cultural. Just women, just they want their uteruses out. They don't want to have a lot of children, or they have a lot of children. And I had to share with them, removing perfectly healthy uteruses feels a lot like eugenics to me. Feels a lot like being part of a system to stop us from reproducing ourselves. See, unnecessary C-sections on young people, on first-time moms, it feels a lot like eugenics because they're going to limit the amount of children we can have in our lifetime due to cesarean section. So those are practical applications of a eugenics theory.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so we're gonna roll through your PowerPoint and then we'll kind of go here there because I think everything that you're talking about is just so like just so timely. You know what I mean? Got a
Bro, let me
couple of
grab my
comments.
light right quick.
Okay,
It
grab
has
your light.
fallen.
Okay, grab your light. So Leon says, let's talk then. Losing our resilience, eugenics, life
I'm
control
so
based on race, ethnicity. And then Sister Karen said, a planned generational superiority override still in use today. Thank you for that, dear
okay.
sis. Okay, so we gonna get into it. This PowerPoint, J Mom, and I seen you do. I know you changed some stuff up. I was so blown away because I always feel like that's kind of what our ancestors was trying to tell us. Because we knew that we may not have known the terminology, but we knew some of this stuff. We just didn't have the terminology of how to say it. But we're gonna go through your PowerPoint and kind of talk a little bit about it because I feel like our people need to know this is like a real timely discussion. You still there?
Yes.
Okay.
First, I just want to just thank y'all for dealing with all of my shenanigans because I am connected in the tiny house on the farm with the air conditioner and the wall going and it's loud and I'm trying to get the lighting right. So I just made my own self laugh. So
Okay.
thank y'all.
All
um
right. So
I'm
the
ready.
mother tongue. So go right on ahead. Uh-oh. Did you lose your light again?
Yeah. Yeah, but I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna
get your
just go
light.
on and let it happen.
All right.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, so I
okay,
don't
Jen.
have control of the PowerPoint. You do, right?
Just let me know. I'll roll. Let me know to yep. I'll roll it.
Okay, well, I just want to start with a little bit of introduction. Like this
Okay.
PowerPoint has been through several evolutions, and this current evolution is more catered to my current work. When I started with this PowerPoint, it was because my clinics were in communities, primarily Black communities. And I used this PowerPoint to kind of share with other people and sometimes with us, especially with new hires, what was going on in our community. There's a concept called epigenetics that shows that we have cellular change through our generations when we've been exposed to trauma. And so we throw words away or around so easily. Like for the last at least 5 years, I would say, beginning about, up to 10 years ago, we have been inundated with words just being thrown around. And much of the time, people don't even know really at the core what they mean. I've heard white supremacy used so much in the last decade. I've heard, you know, all kinds of, I'm just going to group them in like words around DEI, but when you ask people what does that really mean, they don't know. Trauma, 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 trauma. This is because of trauma. And so when you start to talk to people, especially those who don't agree with the concept of epigenetics, um, illustration is good. Like showing, being able to show what that might look like, what that experience, or demonstrate what that experience might feel like for people who are coming up out of generations of people who have been in chattel slavery, who have then, since chattel slavery, been through multiple iterations of, I'm going to say physical, but maybe not chattel slavery, and also mental slavery, which is how the PowerPoint kind of, evolved to be what it is now. But so that's the root of this PowerPoint, is just to be educational and to kind of show people, to illustrate what it feels like, what it means to grow up in Black communities, and what epigenetics looks like, and to really show a resilience around that. This is not about like begging white folks to do um, everything for us. It's about being resilient and knowing that we have to do for self or suffer the consequences. For me, in the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I was taught do for self or suffer the consequences. Everything else is icing on the cake. That statement is not to say that my ancestors are not owed something. It's to say that until this day, it is September 6th, 2024, the debt that is owed to us has not been repaid. So the answer to that is not to lay down, sit down, beg, and do bad. The answer is to do what our ancestors did and to be resilient and make a way. And so that is, I just wanted to give a little bit of the thought around the PowerPoint. I've done this PowerPoint in so many places. This is probably like my 50th time doing this PowerPoint, but the third time doing it in this new iteration. Fitz is at the door. So you can go to, so, and I want to bring, attention to this first page, because where it used to say the header that you just left, it used to say racism is a public health crisis, and it has now kind of expanded to the new public health crises. But racism is going to be incorporated throughout the PowerPoint. And if you now go to that next slide with the DNA, and so if you work in healthcare, particularly if you work in healthcare around Black folks, you will hear like, my mama had the sugar, so I got the sugar. Or people in my family, my grandmother had hypertension and heart conditions. So, I'm going to have it, or I have it. The reason why I have it is because of that. And so, data has shown us that when we look at genes, genes account for about 10% of human disease, but the vast majority, the other 90% of our risk, is determined by our environment. That's so important to say to us in the beginning. Like, we're going to talk about epigenetics, but when we talk about what has been dealt to us through our genes, that's a percentage. That should not direct our lives. If our grandmother had hypertension, our words should say, I am not going to have hypertension, because I am so grateful that I have so many more opportunities to avoid some of the things that might have triggered my grandmother. So if you could go to the next slide, which is one of my favorite teaching tools. If you know me, you've seen this slide. I'm going to claim this slide. This is a picture of, because I'm going to claim this slide. This is my grandmother. And my grandmother is pregnant with my mother. And because my mother was a female child, she is born with all of her eggs, which means that little me right there, that is me, right? I have always been connected to my grandmother, chemically connected, because as my grandmother was pregnant with my mom, I was there. So what does that mean? Why is that significant? It means that the experiences that my grandmother had, negative or positive, that produced chemical reactions, affected me. I was there. They affected my mom. So I always like to say, like, picture you're driving down the street. I do this with pregnant women, right? Like you're driving down the street and oh my gosh, you almost get into an accident. So you put your feet on the brakes and it's like, "Ah!" And you had 2 inches before you hit the car in front of you. Well, the first, you're going to have a lot of feelings going on in that moment, right? Like, oh my God, I'm anxious, it's fight or flight. The hormones are in the blood because you almost just got seriously hurt in an accident. Well, that produced a chemical reaction in the body. And you knew what it was for, right? You just got in an accident. So, all of those things you're feeling, you have context to why you're feeling them. But your baby does not have context. Those that gush of hormones goes through the system and it goes all the way through your body. And here now you're pregnant and you have a baby there getting that gush, but there's no context. So imagine being stimulated like that the entire pregnancy. Imagine the cortisol in the blood the entire time. So the baby is under constant stress chemical. I mean, there's an argument to talk about what it's like for the mother who is under that, but I'm trying to show the connection. There's a baby there, and that baby is experiencing the chemicals, but not in context. So that's that connection. That's how someone could be affected by their grandmother or their great grandmother, right? Because I would argue that I'm connected to my grandmother who was connected to her grandmother. And this is how the
Mm-hmm.
line goes down. And we're not just connected, it's not like a spooky thing. This is real physiology. We're connected.
Right.
Why
Right.
is that important? Can you please go to the next slide?
Yes.
Because, you know, you might look at me and be like, she probably could fit in whatever environment she in. I swear when I was in the Dominican Republic, they had tried to hold my mama over there like you look like one of the natives. So I sometimes, I look at me. I don't look like my grandmother. But that was my grandmother, and her name is Bernice Watkins. And my grandmother was really instrumental in raising me as a young person. And so my grandmother clearly is a dark skinned Black woman. Her experience is not my experience, but I'm part of her experience and I'm part of her rearing because my grandma wasn't no joke. So I wanted to show you because this is important. And if you could go to the next slide, why it's important is because Black people in America have been under constant pressure. And I'm going to go through a timeline, and this is a skeleton timeline. If we went through the true timeline, we would be here for hours. I'm going to just hit some points. And what I want to share is that these points aren't even going to dive or delve into chattel slavery. But I don't want that to be forgotten. But sometimes when we're talking to people about chattel slavery, they'll say that was a long time ago, which it wasn't. But they'll say that was a long time ago, and you weren't alive, and we weren't alive. So we're not going to talk about that other than to say our ancestors went through a horrible period of time, unlike no other time. Did slavery exist globally? Yes. Did slavery exist the way our people went through it? No.
Mm.
This was a little bit different, but it happened, and we're going to, so that's another show.
Right.
It's a long show. But for this show, we're going to start from 1865, right? Because that was when the Civil War was, quote, ended, and Black people were, quote, free. What did that mean? What does it mean when generations, when you have 4 or 5 generations on a plantation, and then all of a sudden somebody comes and knocks and says, slavery is over, you're free? It was illegal for you to read. You couldn't even look a white person in the eye. You don't really know how to do anything except serve people. I mean, truly, we know how to do things, but you have been under a model or where all you could do is make sure that white folks were okay, which is a mental health condition in and of itself, where your
Yep.
total being is responsible for making sure someone else is comfortable, but not you, not your spouse, not your children, not your mother, someone else. So that has happened generation to generation to generation. And somebody comes and knocks and says, you're free. Free to do what? Where do you go? When that happens, where do you go? I don't know how to read. I'm clearly black. I can't go hide most of the time, amongst people. I have no money. Like, where do I go? So we know that when slavery ended, chattel slavery ended, then sharecropping came in. And to add on to sharecropping, because sharecropping was, a scam, you can stay here, you can farm the land, and we'll give you a cut of what you farm. But we know today that from overwhelming data and evidence and stories that people never got out of debt. They were still in slavery as sharecroppers, but they just weren't legally in slavery. But let's put that to the side and say 1865, the Civil War ends. But because Black people were never intended to experience freedom in America, the next year, the Black codes come in because it's like, oh, y'all gonna be under some type of law because you don't get to experience freedom in the way we experience freedom. You have to be controlled. So the Black laws come right in, or excuse me, the Black codes, and Black people are still kind of managed. Not only that, to keep Black people in perpetual terror, the KKK is formed. This is the next year. The KKK is formed, and they operate for a long time under a domestic terrorism model. That is what terrorism is. We were terrified when the KKK came on the scene. It, even though they were there, even though the Black codes came, our people were resilient and they had a way of working through that. I don't know how, but somehow they figured out how to not only work through that period, but to be somewhat prosperous, right? Because they're coming from absolutely nothing, from negative numbers. We're not even at the zero, right? Like from negative numbers. They're coming into man, they're achieving great things. And so it got to be so brutal that eventually, a few years after, and you see, I have here 1867 begins the Reconstruction period. And that is when the North has to send Union soldiers down to the South to protect Black lives because we are being terrorized again by the KKK. We have no rights, we're being controlled. And so under this period of time, called the Reconstruction, Black people are able to purchase property. They're buying the land, sometimes the land that they were enslaved on. They're buying that land. Black people could vote, and there were some Black politicians. So not only could we vote, but we voted in some people because Black people were kind of numerous in the South at that point. And so we are starting to experience, like, to get ahead. I want to stop here for a minute in the Reconstruction period, and I want to share that at this time, white former plantation owners were granted reparations. And I think that's one of the most important things that we never hear is that because white plantation owners lost the ability to own people, they went to Washington, D.C. and appealed to the government to pay them reparations for their losses. Those reparations were granted. So when we talk about reparations, I there are ancestors to the white slave owners who received reparations. Those reparations, we could argue, helped their family and helped them to maintain some semblance of wealth. That happened. Near the end of the Reconstruction period, the Democrats wanted something from the Republicans, and so they did a little negotiation. They wanted a presidential candidate, and the Democrats, excuse me, the Republicans wanted a presidential candidate. The Democrats were like, that could work, but you have to pull back the Union Army. So they got together because it's two sides of the same coin. They negotiated and they pulled the Union soldiers back. Once that happened, then it went right on back to how it was.
Uh-oh. Oh, Jaden froze. It was getting good. So y'all, while she's unfreezing herself, I'm trying to send her a text. See, my thing is, we gonna definitely talk about, we talking about this mental health piece and reparations, but I think it's always good to get the backstory. And too often in our community, we just get the talking points. You back, Jay?
I'm back. You know, I'm on the
But you
farm.
froze. Okay, I know. I was just talking to you. Got back. So you
Okay.
froze right when you talked about how people's families, benefited from that, and the things
Yes.
went right back onto the way they were.
Yes. And so that's what I was going to say about convict leasing. We entered into convict leasing, and convict leasing allowed again black people to be put into a form of physical slavery. And so that looked like first of all, you could be convicted of a crime at the word of a white person, right? So you just walking down the street with your homeboy and they say that was the one that did whatever. Well, you would go to jail, and of course you would go to a courtroom of no one who was your peer, and you would be convicted. Oftentimes when you were convicted to do work. Oftentimes you would have to
Wow.
work for your former plantation owner who been trying to get you back anyway, but now they've accused you of a crime. Remember, we were only given freedom unless we were convicted of a crime. And so this was being done a lot. So if you did not go back to where you were and work on that plantation, then you went to mines. So this was a period of time where black people were literally worked to death in mines, and they knew
Wait,
it. Like as they
mine
got
like the
sent
coal is?
in mines, like coal mines and mines.
Wow.
And so yeah, there's a lot to say about black people working in that industry because they have been convicted of a crime. That happened for a long time. Anything I'm talking about, it wasn't like a year. When you look at the years, it was a minute
20 years. That's half a century. That
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 that was
convict
happening, right? Like, and so
under
it had
under that
different
under that
iterations.
word.
It
Under
had
that word.
mhm, mhm. So then we want to think about Jim Crow, right? Because Jim Crow was separate or equal. Most of us will know about it. You know, in the 30s and 40s, we see, you know, that fountain. If you white, you drink here. If you black, you drink here. Jim Crow was another iteration of black codes. And it was just always to remind us that you are not equal, that you do not get to experience freedom in the same way. Jim Crow lasted a long time. I
Yeah,
want
like
to go
70
back a
years.
little bit in this timeline because my grandmother was born in 1930. And I think that's important because now y'all done seen a picture of my grandma. You know her name. She was born in 1930. So she is in the thicket of all of this. She was born in Fort Worth, Texas. Well, now we're getting
Mm.
to Jim Crow, to the end of Jim Crow. 1950, I have on here. My mother was born in 1953. So we, just like if you think about your own ancestor, you got people who are being born in just this time. This is just a little period of time that I'm showing you, right? So you got your mama and your grandmama and her mama was born in this time, right? So it was not a long time ago. We gotta stop allowing people to get away with that. Like, oh, you couldn't read, but that was a long time ago, and now you want to continue to criticize literacy, even though that's a whole nother question.
Now, no, I got you. But hold on, Javon, because with that convict leasing and Jim Crow, one of the things I noticed when things go away, it really is morphing into something else.
Mm-hmm.
What did Jim Crow morph into? What did convict
So
leasing morph into? They didn't go away. There's no way.
right,
Just
so
like
we
slavery
gonna
didn't go away.
continue. We gonna continue on the spectrum. We'll
Oh,
see because we're gonna carry this on. I don't want to talk about all of this without taking a moment to honor my grandma, your grandma, they
yeah.
mama, and talk about resilience because I talked about 1930. Well, while all of this was going on, our people were so resilient. And so they weren't like, oh my God, I'm gonna wait for them to write me a check or a grant so they could make me free. They understood what was happening, what was right in front of them, right? So they were creating right through all of that they were creating. So when we look at 1921, we got to talk about Black Wall Street. Or when we look at
Yeah.
1923 Rosewood, because in the midst of all of this that we just talked about, our people were creating some of the most successful communities to this day. Like we talk about Black Wall Street to this day because it was amazing, right? You read about that and you're like, that was us. So in the midst of
Yeah.
all of that, it's still we remixing. That's who we are, remixing all the
And you
time.
know what, Javon? They said right out of slavery, there were over 60 black towns throughout the South.
Mm-hmm.
Lane, Arkansas, like all in, and most of them are sitting underwater today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the red summer of 1919 when they intentionally burnt down black towns. So just to back your point up,
Yeah.
we was getting it in. We were trying to make our way.
I just read about the town in Georgia that's covered by water that people keep dying. I said Lake Lanier or something like that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But so
yeah.
coming out of Jim Crow, we're going into the civil rights movement. Can you go to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am.
And the civil rights movement was like a moment, that like waiting to excel. Like this was a moment where we could excel, right? Because for once, Black folks were starting to make a connection, right? Like, I'm Black. I'm connected to Africa. My hair is amazing. I'm gonna wear it in an afro. I'm gonna wear a dashiki, right? Like whatever little pieces. Imagine having all of that torn away from you and you grasping for pieces. Every piece is a win, right? So the civil rights movement is the era of Black and proud. It's the era of James Brown. It's the era of somewhat a different kind of unity and awakening. And also, the Southern Christian Leadership Movement is there. We got the Black Panther Party. We got the Nation of Islam. Like, it's a moment where we're talking about Black things and Black creation. In this moment comes the school food, the free lunch program. To this day, if our
Hmm.
children eat free lunch at school, we need to thank the Black Panther Party. To this moment, if
Right.
we receive health care at a community health center, then we need to excuse me, the Black Panther Party, because Black folks are creating one thing. If you study the history from beginning to end, one thing I love about Black people is that when we create it for everybody.
That's
Anybody
right.
eating a school lunch today benefited from the Black Panther Party. Anybody going into a clinic
Free
today.
clinic.
So
Hmm.
when Black people are okay, we create and we make a way for everybody. And that just has to be said because we'll come back to that later. But so here we are in this moment of time. I love when my mother talks to me. My mom grew up in San Francisco, and when she talks to me about the Black Panther Party and things they did in the community and how it felt, I love to hear that. So we're in that moment, but we can't be in that moment, right? Because remember, this has been always been about classism and keeping, racism,
Mm.
but in a way, classism, right? Like these people are here to work. This is not about being competitors. It's not about being equal. This is
Hmm.
about work. The proof is in the timeline. So here, people are learning things. People are getting strong, right? Like the Black Panther Party, the Nation, the Southern Christian Leadership. I'm leaving something out, but they're all getting strong,
Nick,
right?
it's all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, people are joining, and that's scary. That's scary for the government. I left something out with Black Wall Street because I want to make that connection now. Black Wall Street grew. It was strong. It was economically sound, and it was torn down in the blink of an eye because of the accusation of a white woman that a brother in an elevator was
Hmm.
inappropriate with her. And that it ended up with community violence, white community violence against the Black community. But the US government also participated in
Hmm.
the annihilation of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street via dropping a bomb.
Hmm. So move wasn't the first time.
So,
Absolutely.
that being said, while Black folks are having a moment of enlightenment in the civil rights movement in 1971, J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, says, this has to be stopped. It's getting too strong. And this is all, now we get into documents, right? Because we're talking about the government and the FBI. They formed the counterintelligence program, and the goal is to prevent the rise of a Black messiah. That is
Javon,
documented.
before you get into that, let me just say this. When you said that, it just made me like go bing. I think
Mm-hmm.
also there is something when Black people attempt to create something that's theirs. See, the whole thing around slavery was to create a new people without an identity. When it
Mm-hmm.
looks like we're about to have an identity that's ours, we can't let that happen. Like, no, y'all supposed to be what we want y'all to be. And we
Mm-hmm.
see that now. Most kids who get in trouble in school and they're being somewhat defiant, it's because they sometimes trying to make their own way. And then it usually be the teacher who can't don't know how to mold that. Is like, we want you to show up like this. So when you said that, I thought like, wow, we were loving each other, we were producing with each other, we were working stuff out, we were discovering, the things that had been stripped from us. Mm-mm, no, absolutely not.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Agreed. So basically why I have brought back the Black Wall Street was because I wanted to again show this counterintelligence program, that was a state sponsored program. This is not like Billy Bob from down the street coming to inflict harm on us. This is the United States government, the Federal Bureau of
mhm,
Investigations. And what they do is they send informants in to all of those organizations with the goal of bringing them down and bringing them intelligence. What does that look like? Well, we all know it looks
mhm,
like Martin Luther King being murdered. It looks like Malcolm
mhm,
X being murdered. It looks like Fred Hampton being murdered. And the way they did Fred Hampton, I mean, they
mm.
had an informant to get in, work through the organization, and give them a
Give a
floor
blueprint.
plan of his
Yes.
house so that they can go in
Yes.
and kill him. So, this is the United
Yeah.
States government that we're talking about. So, at a low point for us, they bring down somewhat these movements.
Mm.
And some of these
Talk about
movements
garden.
are, some of them are still working to be strong, to get as strong as they
Yeah.
once were. Um, I want to move into, so Black folks are resilient. So we talked about civil rights, and then the counterintelligence, also called the COINTEL program, comes, and we down, but we not out. This is just not who we are. And so we remix, we getting it together, and then we get dealt the big blow. Once
Ooh.
again, once again,
Whew.
this is state sponsored, or should I guess I'm gonna say state sponsored, but the CIA works to put strategically place crack cocaine in Black communities. This
Now, wasn't
moment
that to
in
fund the war
time,
though, Taylor?
huh?
Weren't they trying to wasn't they trying to fund the war though?
Yes, the Iran Contra. This is that Iran Contra period. I just,
Mhm.
bro, I just went to
Uh,
see Ronald Reagan last night, the movie.
Oh,
They
okay. I didn't
told the
know about
whole
that. Okay.
story. They told the whole story, showed a few pictures of Iran Contra, ain't talked about none of this. None of this. Um, and I said to Fitz, because the movie, if you didn't know, would be a nice movie. It was a good movie. But that point right there, it's like, wow, you're highlighting the work of this president in, like, bringing down the wall and bringing down the Soviet Union. At home there is a whole people being destroyed, no mention in the
Wow.
movie. So this is placed in strategically in Black communities, and this is something like we not knowing how to be resilient about, because it's highly addictive and it's collapsing people's lives. So in this moment, children are being removed from homes. People are doing unspeakable things. They're on this highly addictive drug, and the fabric of our community is being changed. The way we keep house, the way we keep ourselves up, what it means to be a
Yeah.
family, what is the nuclear family, how does so many things are being impacted in this moment in time. And this is put on us. It's put on us intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say we were as resilient as we were in the past because crack hurt us. And to this
Yeah.
day, September
It's
6th,
still hurt.
2024, we are still struggling with the result and effects of the crack epidemic. Um, to now we got to partner with that
Mm.
because while crack is brought into our communities, it's strategically handed to the black folks. Black men are being incarcerated, right? Because there becomes a drug market, so people are using crack, somebody got to sell crack, both will get you in jail. The government is behind the scenes working on different sentencing. So if you're caught with
Mm.
crack cocaine, you will receive a harsher sentence than if you're caught with powdered cocaine.
Yeah.
Powdered cocaine, of course, is marketed to the white community, crack cocaine to the black community. Then we
Mm.
get the prison industrial complex coming in. We get your boy Joe Biden, who people just forgot all history
Yep.
around, who
Mm-hmm.
in partnership with the Clintons labels black men as super predators, and
Yep.
together they are successful passing three strikes you're out and sending a lot of young men, particularly, I mean, a lot of people, but a lot of young men to prison forever, forever, for distributing a drug that they sent in strategically to our community. Now, do I think it's right? No. I mean, we shouldn't have been distributing it, but was it orchestrated? Yes, it was.
Yep.
And a partner to that crack was the prison industrial complex. And we know that the prison industrial complex still exists. I am here in the state of Louisiana right now. I have been told that we house the most prisoners in the country. And the way we house them is different, right? Like they're going to work here. There's going to be like chain gang work here in this hot weather, in this sticky weather. Um, I read the other day that second degree murder here, we were looking up what is a life sentence, and second degree murder here gets you a life sentence with no opportunity for parole. And the reason we were just kind of looking at how many years a life sentence was when we were talking about San Quentin. And for some crimes, a life sentence is around 25 years and you can get out. So sometimes when you hear people who have three life sentences, that's why, because they could have got out in 25 years. Well, here, there's none of that. And they have the most prisoners in the country. So this was hand in hand. If you could go to the next slide, Ro. I do want to
Yeah.
say that during this time, because we got to have our wins, we had Fillmore. I'm from San Francisco, so
You
we
pause
had Black communities. Yeah,
this
you
one
can.
right here.
Yeah, you can stay here. So we did have
Okay.
wins. There were Black communities being built all around the country. Um, the reason why I had that previous slide that said crack cocaine and it was in red is because I have to remind myself all the time that I'm 52 and my mother was part of this disaster. So I noticed that my neighborhood, I grew up in a community at that time called Fillmore. And when I was about 8 or 9, I noticed changes in that community. I know you could see it. My community was awesome. All my maternal family lived in the matter of blocks. And we could just see, anybody with eyes could see the changes. And I was only a child, right? But I have to remind myself that today, if I'm talking to a 35-year-old, they don't even know Black people. They only know post crack Black people. And post
Mm.
crack Black people are
Mm.
different. Right? I got to know
Yes,
my
they are.
grandma, in 71, in 72. I mean, I got to know Black people, and I'm so grateful for that before crack.
Mm.
I talked to some elders. This is what this slide is about. I talked to some elders about what life was like pre-crack and post-crack, and these elders were in Marin City. So when I was preparing this slide deck, they were saying the same thing. Black people who know will go to Rosewood and Black Wall Street. And so they brought up those communities. They talked about the pride in working families coming to Marin. A lot of people came to Marin, to the shipyard, from the South. So they talked about the pride in that. They talked about intact families staying together and building the community. And they talked about Black excellence and home-based business economy. Post crack, they talked about families being broken, a lot of death. They talked about child protective services being weaponized against the community. They talked about the community breakdown, gangs, fatherless homes, and prisons. And if you could go to the next slide, that's kind of winding up that first part about what happened to us and why that, the epigenetics part of that, how that was passed down to us. So you saw that timeline. So I just
Yes.
want to bring your mind back to my grandmother. That's what my
Oh,
grandmother had to
you
pass
talking about
down.
all about this? Yeah.
Yeah. So my grandmother, those were her experiences. I learned as an adult that my grandmother, at the time that she was having babies, was a maid in Marin City. I didn't know that because as I grew older, my grandmother had achieved some success. She was a aide to Dianne Feinstein, and she had achieved some success. I never had it in my head, the journey, as I was a young, when I was a teenager, I only saw that part of my grandmother's life. And I never thought, oh my God, she might have went through this or went through that. My grandmother was a maid in Marin City.
Mm,
What does that mean? So everything I shared with you is just proving that our ancestors, our elders, us, we have been under a constant flood of cortisol, that fight or flight
mm,
hormone. We just been, and
mm,
even if we didn't want to be in it, even when we're trying to be strong, we got the words in our mind, people in the community saying this is what's happening to you. Like, we're under constant cortisol. And so that can present mentally or physically or both, right? So mentally, that might look like depression or anxiety. Imagine always being under cortisol, right? Or disassociation and self-hatred. And what I put by that, it's not so hormonal, but it's the idea that some Black people will do all that they can to be different than the other Black people. Like, oh, that's them people over there. That's not like me. I put that under mental health issue, because how does that feel to not even be a part of the people you're a part of? But you think that you have to separate yourself for any level of success. And then physically looking at, hypertension and cardiac disease, diabetes and obesity, and other things, right? Other things as well. Um, we know now that they talk a lot about Alzheimer's being type 3 diabetes, like that constant sugar in the body. So all of these things, this is how they affect our health. And sometimes without a demonstration like this, we don't know how to say that. People will say,
mm,
oh, racism causes hypertension. And then when you get called on that, you're like, I don't know how that happens. Well, this is how that happens. And so this is the importance of just knowing that, so that we can at least share with people there is a way out. There is a
mm.
way out. But because I don't want to get lost, and not really address the idea of what you said. As we went through that timeline, one thing ended, another thing started. One thing ended, another thing started. One thing ended, another thing started. Right
Mhm.
now, there has been anti-blackness. I believe there will always be anti-blackness. I just, until
Okay.
somebody can change the way I think, that's what I feel. I think the key is how we respond to it and how we raise our expectations and standards around how other people are going to respond to us. Part of it being our own accountability, how we show up, how we present in the world, how we love each other, how we build community. But as we move forward, there's a new assault on the table, and it's affecting all of us. But some
Yes.
people weather it better, right? Like, some people have more resources, so they
Yes.
can weather this storm better. But basically, poor folks, wherever they at, and Black folks, some of them being those poor folks and some of them not being, because all black people are not poor, right? We got black folks that's doing things, that's getting things, that's having resources and doing the best. So that's why I say there's
Yep.
a new assault, and the most vulnerable people to this assault are the people of any color without resources. And so if you go to the next slide, the next slide, I don't know why it didn't fit in there, but if the question is, what about the food? Because now we're being attacked. The simple truth about food trauma and the over medication of our communities. Right now, we have entered into a space where we can't control any of these things happening around us. As we went through that timeline, there was some semblance of, I can do better if we do this. I can do better if we do this. Together, we will achieve this. Right now, we have an assault going on around us, and we can't really even put our finger on what it is. But it is 100% absolutely related to the food we eat and the environment that we're in. The food we eat is poisoning us 100%.
Mm.
If you're poor with less resources, you're getting poisoned more potentially because you have less opportunity to buy your way out of it, to buy quality foods. When
Mm.
I say that, I'm going to prove my own self wrong, but I'm saying that is where we're at today. Poor folks are like, I get SNAP. I go to this poor quality store because a fact is that if you live in a lower resourced area, you receive lower quality food. That's the way supermarket distribution happens. So where they know people will pay more money for food, then people get better quality food. But if you grew up in the hood, everybody has a story about one of these ghetto stores. Like for me, it's Foodland. It can go food co where we just nothing looks like we should be eating it, but we have to eat it because it's what we have. 95% of serotonin is produced in our gut. 95%. Logically, without that knowledge, if you start thinking about depression and anxiety and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so sad, I can't get out the bed, I can't really function, you would think something's wrong with your mind, right? Because it's up here. So you would think, I need medicine because something's going on with my mind. But the truth is, only 5 to 10% of serotonin, which is known as the happy chemical or the happy hormone, is produced in your brain. The rest of it is produced in your gut, as are 30 neurotransmitters. So 30 things that make us think and feel the way we feel and think every day are produced, in our gut, and just a little bit up here, mostly in our gut. Why is that important? It's important because and if you could go down to the next slide, I think I have a picture. I want to demonstrate the physical connection. So sometimes we hear, especially we've been in this wave of kombucha, and I got to get my gut health together, and I need fermented foods, and I'm gonna drink kombucha for my microbiome. And we don't really talk about the literal physical connection between our brain and our gut. We just think we got to get a good, healthy gut, and somehow, some way that will boost our immune system, or we don't really even associate in my conversations mental health with it, but we do associate physical health with it. Well, if you look at this picture, it will demonstrate that it should demonstrate that there is a physical connection between the brain and the gut. In the back of the brain, in the stem there, where the arrow is going down, there's something called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve travels all the way down to the gut. And then it has little fingers. And so picture this, like picture your gut being wrapped with little fingers around it. Those are the vagus nerve, right? The extensions. And so what you eat has a direct connection, shoom, up to the brain. And what the brain thinks has a direct connection down to the gut. And that's why you see the two arrows. It's not like it happens somehow in the bloodstream and something. It's like a physical connection. So if 95% of the hormone that makes you feel good, that makes you want to get up in the morning and get out and get some sunlight and be productive, if 95% of that is in the gut and all you eat is junk food, then what does that mean? So
Mm.
if you, I don't even know what's in my next slide. Can you just go to it so I can see? Because
Yeah.
I'm on another row. Okay, so the microbiome. So I'm not there yet. So all of us, you can stay there though. All of us
Yeah.
know, or I'm gonna just make the assumption that all of us know. I know many. All of us know young people who might not have had healthy food in a week. It's so easy. It's so easy to do. And when I say that, I'm just taking the burden off us because we probably didn't either. But let's talk about young people because that's where I feel the most angry about what is happening. Picture a mom who is on her own and she has two children and she's working a job, like she's trying to hold this all together on her own. So in the morning we getting these babies together, they got to go to school. I didn't have a lot of time, I'm gonna run them to school, but on the way we're just okay, we'll just pick up some McDonald's, we'll just pick up a breakfast at McDonald's. And then that happens and then you get to school, they either get free lunch and the lunch usually isn't, I mean, the other day I went to my granddaughter's school to check out what they were eating, and I said, you ain't never eating here. She taking lunch every day because that is just not, it's just not designed for health. I don't think health in the way that we're talking now was at the center of the menu uh, for some of these school lunches. So just say your child either eats that school lunch, or more likely, if they're a little bit older, they might have had a little bit of change. You might have gave them some money. They go and they buy something, and that usually is, junk food. Maybe I'm gonna get some Takis and a Sprite, something like that. Then they get home and mom's getting home from work, let's get everybody together, we gotta get ready for school, I don't have a lot of time, I'm gonna grab something, it's a box, something in a box or something from the freezer. This is not foreign. Like, I know I did this some days. This sound like some of the days I had about 10 years ago. But today it's on steroids. So that could happen Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Every day is something frozen, something boxed. Every morning we in a rush. We might have like a cinnamon roll in a packet, or this is not far fetched, is what I'm saying. So we all know a child or more who probably has had ultra processed foods every day. Ultra processed foods has been directly linked with mental health challenges. I just told you 90 to 95% of serotonin is made in the gut. They haven't made any because their gut has been full of processed foods, full of red number this, yellow number this, blue number this, 70 things we can't pronounce, most of them chemicals. Like, they were not able to produce serotonin. How else do you get it? Sunlight. We know our children don't go outside no more. They're not getting it from sunlight, not getting it from balanced meals. So your child start acting up. Because anyway, who could sit in school today anyway? School is a dangerous place. So your child get there and start acting up. And the first tool they have is, let's get them to a psychiatrist, so that they can tell you that your child is depressed and needs to be sedated. Or your child, it's a myriad of things that they might say that lead your child to be sedated. It was never, what did you eat this week? How can we get you on some good foods? I know you might not have a lot of time. Maybe we got a community group that's cooking good food. Our children are becoming lifelong pharmaceutical patients because we can't feed them good food. And this is not uncommon. I was with hundreds of social workers recently. I spoke at an event and I told them, this group, we were on the wrong side of crack. We were weaponized then. We're starting to be on the wrong side again. You cannot let the medical system come into one of your clients and medicate them before you have researched what kind of food they're eating and try to give a solution. We are being medicated and it's a crisis. So, what helps us, right? Like, so building a strong microbiome helps us to build serotonin, other necessary neurotransmitters, and also protect our physical health. And to do that, we have to have a diet full of fiber and vegetables. If we're not doing that, we're not building up our gut. Our gut, our gut, when I say our gut, I mean our intestines, right? Lots of intestines. They are covered by one layer of cells, a teeny layer of cells. Those cells replace themselves every few days. But if we're not eating the right foods, the microbiome is not protecting them, and holes are getting in the midst of them. And what should be inside is getting outside. When we hear chronic inflammation, everything is chronic inflammation, that's where that's coming from. What helps it? A variety of vegetables, lots of fiber. Things our grandparents and our mamas used to eat: beans. We don't want to eat beans because poor people eat beans. Beans are one of the best things you can eat for the gut. Somehow they confused us, and now we don't want to eat from the ground, from the earth.
Mm.
So one of the greatest things that we have, Ro, we could talk about all kinds of things that's affecting our community, but if we can't produce resilient thinkers anymore, it's a done deal. This food is taking away our ability to be as resilient as our ancestors and elders that we talked about in the last slides. And we're not talking about it. We're not talking about it as a community. And so even when we think about metabolic disorders like diabetes, when we think about hypertension, those things are all connected to the microbiome, a lack of fiber, and not having enough diversity to build a strong microbiome in the gut. And we eat too much. Somebody somewhere told us we had to eat 3 times a day. It's a lie. And so I was watching a document. I know this because I was taught this in the Nation of Islam, but I was reading something or watching something, and they cited the person who lied and said breakfast was important. It was part of, I think, Kellogg's plan to sell cereal.
Oh,
Breakfast is not the
wow.
most important meal a day. When we eat 3 meals a day, we are drugging ourselves. We do not need that much food. We can't heal. And then,
That's
oh
right.
Lord, don't let's not look at the snacks. Let's not look at the snacks.
And the portion sizes.
So I don't know what I got. What do I got left here, Ro?
Let's see. Let's see.
Oh, sugar. Let me just touch on that. I think this is so significant. The brain needs sugar to function. Our body needs sugar, but we only need 62 grams of glucose in a 24-hour period. I had to put that there because if we just think if you had 2 sodas yesterday, you surpassed 62 grams.
Wow.
So if you go to, because a soda has about 40 grams of sugar in it, right? So if you go to the gas station and you get the big one, what was the used to be called, the big goat?
Gulp. Gulp.
You
Yeah, the
have
big gulp.
just from drinking that sugar, you have surpassed the sugar that your body needs. So now, because here I have 2 sodas are about 98 grams. So now you got all this blood, I mean, excuse me, all this sugar trying to figure out where to go, causing inflammation in the brain. Remember, I told you all that new research about Alzheimer's is talking about that sugar just giving inflammation to the brain. But that's what we're not talking about the sugar. Okay, next slide.
Mm.
You can go to past that next slide. One of the things that I wanted to share, I kind of shared that the microbiome starts to change itself right away. I have in here glass storage containers because another way that we're affecting our brain and the way we think and our mental health is through aluminum foil on our food, plastic containers. You might have heard they have so much new data that says humans have so much plastic in their blood. We got to stop that. We have to start slowly replacing plastic in our
And,
house with glass.
and I heard and I also heard that foil contributes to Alzheimer's.
It does. And so think about the deodorant when we start taking the aluminum out. The argument against vaccines, some people will cheapen that argument, but some of it was aluminum in the vaccine. When we think about a newborn baby at 5 minutes of life receiving a hepatitis vaccine, which has aluminum in it, that's a neurotoxin. We're already trying to get that out of all of our products. You're starting to see no aluminum, no aluminum, no aluminum. That's a neurotoxin. So why do you shoot it in a baby's body? We're under attack. I'm saying we are under attack. And these things we don't even know. It's like, well, what can I eat? If you drink water, it has fluoride. Fluoride is a neurotoxin. They don't even have enough data to show that it's worth it for fluoride to be in water for strong teeth. So we're gonna give you strong
So,
teeth, but we're
so,
gonna mess
so,
your brain up.
Javon, hold on just a minute. First of all, Sister Jefferson said, what's the amount of sugar we need in a day?
62 grams.
Okay, that's one. Second thing, Javon. So did this need to give everybody the jab and all that stuff? Why is that? Is it because we're with other humans and our stuff isn't the same, or like why do we need to have all these shots? Or are we with people who are subhuman, quarter human, full human, cats, dogs, and a billy goat? Like what?
Can't speak on
Why?
that. I can't speak on that. I will say that, what they said was, vaccines are going to boost the immune system. Um, I mean, there's so much controversy over the COVID, or excuse me, the jab, the vaccine. I can't speak for, I have spent this whole presentation sharing that we are under assault. And I think we have to be very careful about what we take. My children, you've known me for a long time. My children are not vaccinated, and it was because I did not want them exposed to all of those things. I definitely did not want them exposed to an experimental vaccine. And that's what I will say about the jab is that when it first came out and it was experimental, I thought it best for me to take my chance rather be a part of the pharmaceutical system while they literally experimented, in my opinion, on people. And so, my mother came to me and said, oh, she was resolute. Look, the vaccine about to come out, I'm getting it. I don't care what you say, I'm getting this back. I want to go outside. Because she had been inside. Like they had us, we were scared to death. And I told my mom, if you want it, you should get it, right? Like it's not about me telling you what to do, especially if you're terrified and your quality of life is taken. I'm not getting it. I haven't seen enough evidence that, would convince me to get it. I am concerned right now with autism, with ADHD, with depression, with anxiety, with the suicide rate. When I watch a commercial and they say, oh, this magnificent drug exists to treat your depression, but the side effect may be suicide. And then
Mm.
their best answer to that is to partner this depression drug with another depression drug to help you with whatever came from the first depression. I mean, does that sound logical? See, that's the thing. Does this sound logical? We have to pause and say, hold on a minute. Are we as a people getting healthier or sicker? I think if we
So
look at mental or physical health, we are definitely getting sicker in both categories.
and I don't know how much stuff they make to suit. If you, Javon, you just did a whole presentation on genetics and things you experienced from your mom and being in the wounds and being in the person before her wound and blah 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 blah. Right? What medicine could they give us that would treat me the same way they would say another white person who hasn't had a care in the world? How could we both be having the same experience from a single shot of, and I'm not even just with the jab, but I remember seeing those marks on people's right here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they used to have those
Mm-hmm.
little, you know what I mean? And at a certain point you don't see those no more on people. I
Yeah,
remember
that was a time period.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a time. Robert has that.
Saying that- Right. Yeah, I know some people who do have. I don't have it. I think they've been stopped by the time we came along. But I'm just saying, like, when you think of that, it's like, how can you be possibly treating me and the person who don't have any of those genetic markers that I now have?
Well, the because the thought is that this is population health, right? So we're treating everyone so that no one gets polio. or no one gets. So it's not related to trauma, it's population health. The problem or challenge that we have is that because we have had certain experiences and we might not be living the best lifestyle, we come into any pandemic, epidemic, we come into anything, into the clinic visit we have it on Tuesday, sicker than the next person. So
Right.
like we saw with the pandemic, if you came in and you already had an immune compromised kind of condition, then you probably wouldn't fare as well as someone else that didn't. So,
Right.
and then I would argue, and I'm gonna put a period on that, because that we're looking at population health. So, right, it's like you got to
Right.
remember to take care of yourself so that when things do happen, even if you cut your finger or you get the flu, right, the person in better condition has a better chance of overcoming whatever happens to us. So it's the same with epidemics or pandemics. Now, I would like to know more about weather and environment, because when I was in Haiti and when I was in Ghana, they seemed to be weathering all of this differently than we were, right? And it wasn't as big as a concern and there wasn't the big hype. So that was interesting to me, but they were generally physically fit. They do hard work.
Climbing
That,
trees.
you know what I mean? It was different weather. So that was very interesting to me. But when
Yeah.
you just look at it, it's kind of like reasons, like what I'm talking about, reasons why we have to be healthier people so that we can weather any of this, because it's not gonna stop. It's not going to, when one thing leaves, one thing comes. We have to figure out how to be smarter so that our conversations around this change.
I agree. I'm right there. That's why I want to have this conversation because you have so much wisdom and knowledge, but you break it down to make it so plain, as they say, make it plain. But also, Javon, the other thing is that we deal with a lot of bullshit. Like we deal with a lot of like unnecessary stuff. Like I'm not talking before. That's like if you go out to a restaurant and the waiter comes and everybody being served but you. Now you gotta go into all shit. Why we ain't get our food? Why we ain't like it's just like black folks are susceptible to just things just really different than other people. We always have to fight for our position. We have to always fight to belong. We have to fight for housing. Yeah, fight at your damn job. You gotta feel everywhere you turn around. It's like you can't even just show up and be like, well, let me just go ahead and just go collect and do what I gotta do. Everything is almost like a damn fight, which also makes your blood pressure go up. And that's why we tend to have, more health ailments. That's why Big Mama ankles is swollen. You know what I mean? And she been working a whole damn life, but her ankles are swollen. Like, you know what I mean? We know she got hot sauce and all that. But I'm saying that's the one thing, the food. The other part is all the mental shit we know we have to deal with.
I just want to argue a little bit about that. That at this point, because that is a fact, right? Like I think some of it is our fault because we won't free ourselves, right? Like we
Mm,
wouldn't have to be
okay.
having all of these arguments and be under mental duress if we would do like other communities have done and free ourselves. Like sometimes some of the things that we argue,
I
bro,
get that.
I was at an organization and because we're in the midst of this DEI work and I'm not a fan of it. I think it
Okay, why
is
are
what
you
it
not a fan
is.
of it?
I
Why
think
are
it
you
is
not
what
a
it
fan of
is.
it, Jay?
So
Period.
when because I think DEI needs to be an organic part of anything we do. It's not something you wear on your sleeve. You don't get a committee and then you be like the DEI committee and we're let me show you why. Let me tell you why. So, for example, I lead organizations. I think that fair and equitable processes should be part of the fabric of the organization. When you think about how you set up the organization, when you have your steps that you're doing, it should be a part of it. For example, at one organization I was with, we went through job descriptions and I said, which one of these don't we have challenges like everybody else recruiting, right? Which
Right.
one of these jobs don't require a master's degree? Because there are jobs that don't require a degree at all. I pull them out. Well, then why are we asking for them? Right? Like go
Mm,
through all of these and let's see what requires what. And when it don't require that, then let's do something else. What I'm saying is the way we set up things should be fair and equitable anyway. because I haven't seen a DEI committee yet do the work that feels organic. Separately, I think it is hurting resilience. I was at an organization and I was dealing with PhD level people. And one of them came to me because they did not want to come back to work after the pandemic and told me that commuting was inherently racist.
What?
This is a PhD level person making a good income with a great opportunity. And I said, how is that? I mean, if we go back far enough, we could talk about, unequitable housing policy or why people can't work where they live, or but we're not doing that right now, right? Like this job was available, you applied for it, you don't live here, now you got to cross the bridge. I've been commuting for 25 years, and when I'm commuting and I look over at the car next to me, it's all kinds of people commuting, all kinds, right? Like they had to make the decision to drive into work. Like some of the things that we're coming up with, all for the sake of, you know, things weren't equitable, don't always seem to stand the test of equity. In my practical
I
experience leading an organization, I've had some pretty ridiculous conversations about what is equitable and what isn't. And here's the thing, I'm a person who wants to see equity across the board. I love the word woke. I feel sad about what has happened with the word woke. But I also feel like there had to be other conversation because I don't think that the meaning of the word woke was meant to cripple us. I think it was meant
mm,
to make sure that we was looking around us and creating for ourselves. When you wake up, that means do for self or suffer the consequences, not wake up and look for every opportunity you can to tell somebody why you're not going to do something because it's racist. I don't see how that's going to get us to the next level. Time blindness. I can't make it to work because I don't do well with time, or just silly things that have happened. So I feel like it's almost like when they say the police will do better, we just need to do some retraining. Well, if a person who doesn't see another person as human, you can't train that out of them.
you
It's
definitely
not a
cannot.
training issue, right? Like it's a hiring issue.
Mm,
And so, I think that the effort should be in building a team that understands from the core what equity is, and in integrating that in every part. Like I said, if you don't need a person with a master's degree to hold a job in a department, then why do you have that there? That's called, and that's of any color. You know what I mean? Like take the degree away and give somebody a fighting chance who maybe didn't have a chance to go to college. To me, that looks like equity. I'm not saying a person that's not qualified for the job. A person with work experience usually is the most qualified person for the job. So that argument that DEI causes these diversity hires that aren't qualified, that's not fully true. It's just that when things change, people struggle with it. But I'm seeing the destruction of a culture that has helped us to be great be destroyed because of laziness and excuses. And I think those things can hide under conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Be great. Show up and be great. Show up and do the job you got paid for. I watched a TikTok this morning on the millionaire. I watched the show, Anton Daniels show, and the person recorded themselves being fired from work because that's mature, right? Like, and basically HR called and they were like, we gonna have to let you go because you always late. And she's like, when was I? Well, you was late this day. Well, that's because of this. Well, you was late that day. Well, that's because we already talked about it. Then they said, well, on 8/12, you didn't even show up. She said, that was my birthday. Come
I'm
on.
sorry, Javon.
Come on.
Uh,
Come on. So I'm just saying that, like, I think one of the things that has been challenging for our community is being accountable across the board for all things. If you get a job, show up. If somebody mad at you at work, it's not always because you black. It is not always because you're black. Maybe it's because you're late. I have told so many people in the last 5 years that come to me for help, at work, they'll skirt everybody and come to me. And then I'll say, oh, yes. Tell me the story. Oh, this sounds horrible. Tell me about yourself. Oh, well, I'm on a pit because I've been late. I can't help you until you fix that. When you fix that, you come back. Let's see if the problem with your supervisor still exists when you're on time. Now, if you on time and you showing up and you still experiencing that, I'm with you all day. But you don't get to be mediocre and then come and get the CEO to help you through something when somebody else is accountable for your work. And so I have seen two sides of that coin.
I agree. I
So
agree, Javon.
I'm upset that grandma's ankles are swollen because sometimes they swollen because we won't show up for grandma. We are not going through the same things grandma went through. I don't care how much racism exists in the world today. We are not
Right.
going through what grandma went through.
Absolutely not. You're absolutely correct, Javon.
I mean, damn, play chess.
And we ain't been scrubbing nobody's goddamn toilets. Like, let's
That's
just keep it all the way a butt.
why is your
Yeah.
grandma's ankle swollen? Can you go to the next slide?
Why y'all taking care of her? Why y'all riding her like a donkey? Like, this is crazy. But no, you're right. You're right. I
I
just feel
feel
like,
that. Oh, you
yeah,
could
I
go through
just
these.
feel
We kind of touched on plastic and fluoride. The next one's
right.
fluoride.
Okay.
But I do stop right here for 1 minute because I put a study up here. Go back to fluoride.
Oh,
I put a study here because I thought this was interesting. So chronic exposure. Remember, most of our water has fluoride put into it by the city or the county or the state you live in. Chronic exposure may be linked to decreased intelligence, memory deficits, learning disabilities, and ADHD. Fluoride induced mitochondrial damage, that's cellular damage, may include structural changes, damage resulting in neural inflammation, altered neurotransmitter levels, and disruptions to key signaling pathways. That's why here at the farm, we're putting in a rain catchment water system now so we can circumvent city water.
wow.
And that's in a
Wow.
study that I cited on that slide. I know you have the slides,
Yeah.
which you can share if you want to.
Okay. No worries.
This was another so a Reese found in this research, and it just says on average, a liter of bottled water included about 240,000 tiny pieces of plastic. About 90% of these plastic fabrics were nanoplastic, teeny little pieces of plastic. So that's in our bodies. Basically, that's in our bodies right now. So we thought, the water that we get from the city is horrible. Maybe we'll drink bottled water. That turned out to fill our bodies with plastic that will never go away, forever plastics. And so I think this
Wow.
next one is the slide before the last. And I really want to. So remember, I was doing this about food, and I was trying to tell. They call it DHS out here instead of CPS. And I
Uh
was
huh.
trying to tell them, what they could do, some action items you could do so all of our children, don't get medicated. But go to the next one, the next slide, and one
This
more
one.
slide up. Right here. Not holding people
Oh,
accountable is racism. I was talking to some psychiatrists recently, and they told me, like, but my clients can't afford to eat good. And I told them that is not true. And that's where I said I was going to conflict myself from the beginning because I want to start out by saying what we have access to. Um, Somehow, the reason why I said not holding people accountable is racism, because somehow when black people, when there's a message about goodness and we're talking to black people, the counter is always like black people don't or black people can't. Even with the children road, when we take them on the road trip, it'd be like, well, my mama told me organic food is for white people. That's why we don't go to Whole Foods. They had never been to Whole Foods, so we take them to Detroit. Well, same
yep.
same song. Anything we say good, it's like, well, black people can't do that because they don't have the money. I told them that is feels like racism to me. Black people can afford what we value. But
Yes.
the problem
That's true.
is we have not been taught to value eating good because eating good for us has been juxtaposed almost. Like I talked about how beans, beans are one of the best things we can eat. I know you don't like hearing that because I know you don't like beans,
Yeah,
but
but I even though Javon, that's because we grew up on it. That's the only reason why I don't like. I'm like, oh shit.
beans are
But they
one
look
of the
like
best things to eat. But we've now, it's like nobody want to eat that. But Takis is gonna take you to the grave. And so I shared on Jamil's show recently, and I want to share it again. If Nike made broccoli and put it in a grocery store and had a Nike swoop on it, and we sent Cardi B in to buy 5 bags of Nike broccoli would be sold out and nobody would care how much it costs. Broccoli costs $4 and they raise it to 9. It would be some broccoli eating people because of that.
yeah,
When we want to look good, we come up with the money. It is about value. And so the idea that we can't afford to get it's old. It's old. The question is, are we going to let the children go through another? Because every 10 years, it's something else. Our children are under attack right now so bad just through
yep.
other practices that are going on. Are we going to let their mental health continue to decline because we're not going to value food? What we value, we pay for. And I think we should change our language. And that's why I wanted to change our language in the DEI conversation. No, I'm going to need you to show up. I'm going to need you to be present. If you can't, I am so connected to the mama who is trying to do it all. I think the community should step in. I think some of the churches should start having dinners so that people won't go to McDonald's. Instead, I don't know. I mean, maybe it could be some contributions. People who would be cooking give their money to a group and it's community dinners. This is an epidemic. And we got to support each other. Because I'm saying a lot, but a mama can't do it all. She can't be by herself, have 4 children, cook good food. She can work toward it. She can start to change her language. She can start to make sacrifices and be in groups. It's like homeschooling, right? Like sometimes people can't homeschool their children, but they can sacrifice and get into a homeschool group and be present one day. Same
That's right.
thing with
That's
each
right.
thing. And so not holding people accountable for me feels very racist. I think black people can do whatever they want to do. I don't think anyone's holding me down right now. I think if I'm being held down, it's me. It's some choices I'm making. And
Mm,
that doesn't mean that there's not systems of oppression, but I'm not going to get caught up in them. I should be too enlightened by now. And so should the people around me so that we can achieve. What was it about the Asian community that had them come over and conquer? I know that's not as simple as I'm saying, but I think part of it is mindset, coming over and conquering. I can say a lot more about that, but I'm going to just keep it
no, no, no.
keep
I
it
know what you're saying.
simplified.
I know. I totally get what you're saying, Javon. That's not a
We
far
got to
fetched
get
idea.
it and we got to grind. We got to do it. And this is the next
Look,
slide is the last slide. I don't need to talk about it because we talked about it, but it's one of my favorite slides. The revolution will not be diversity and inclusion trainings. Because if we got to train you to do that, you'll never get it right.
right.
If you didn't come knowing things are fair and just, you got to be policed. We got to audit you all the time. That's it, Ro. That's the presentation, and it has changed a lot since you saw it.
Hey, but all the information in there is still good because I feel like the case for reparations has so much more to do with what you presented, to be honest with you. It had a lot to do with that. As you know, in California, we had a chance to have two bills heard on the floor, and the Black Caucus did not let that happen because they didn't want Gavin Newsom to look like he was not going to pass it. Here we
Mm-hmm.
go again in our position as slave protecting his master. They should have let it go ahead and roll through. And I just feel like that's like, how can we get free when we have people who want us to still be enslaved? How can we get free when people have an investment in our enslavement? How do we
Mm-hmm.
get free? Like I often feel like slavery lasted so long, and I'm not saying white people didn't have nothing to do with it in that time period, but I also think a lot of us had something to do with it. because we was not gonna move. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like that's something that we have to come to grips with in our own community. That we participate in this and just be clear on your sides. Quit showing up. Because if that passed, those same Negroes let me get my butt in line. Like, no, dude, you was holding up the process. So you get to stay over there with who you was holding the process up with. So I don't know. I thought about what happened in San Francisco when that happened to us in Sacramento. And I don't know if we're all talking to each other. But the same thing happened in
I
Frisco.
saw
And
that.
the beauty about San Francisco and then knowing you is that you get me a lot of see what I find is happening now. You have a whole bunch of handkerchief head Negroes attempting to tell you what your reality is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know it's not funny when somebody asks what the economy was under certain people, folks gonna say, "No, that's not how it was for you, dude. You weren't me. I'm telling you what it was like for me." You know,
Mm-hmm.
same thing with this reparations. I'm just not understanding how the Black Caucus did not push that forward. It was just two bills,
Yeah,
and in the
I
end,
saw
they
that.
showed.
I saw that, and my first thought was, why would they even get in the way? Like, let it go to. It doesn't matter what. I read some things that said, oh well, the reason why was because there's some budget issues and whatever it is. Let Gavin Newsom vote on it, right? Let's see how the vote goes. Let him give commentary about it. It's not our job
Right.
to make it easy for him to hide behind whatever is going on, right? Like, at least if I can understand. I mean, California is in debt. Come forth and tell us why and tell us what your plan is. Like, you don't get to hide behind that. Here's the thing that I am not a Democrat. I'm just not. And I'm not a Democrat. I am a supporter of reparations because I believe that my grandmother is old. I My great grandmother Molly Berry was alive until I was in my 20s, and her mother was a slave. I got to see what that had done to her in her language. I can only imagine, which makes me sad, what my ancestors went through. I think that wealth was transferred. I don't get the argument when they say, why does the government have to pay? I wasn't born in slavery. Well, the government has to pay because the government was a part of the destruction of Black people. And I talked about that in the timeline, right? Like, the government gave slave owners, plantation
Reparations.
owners, let me say, not slave owners, but plantation owners who owned enslaved people, reparations. So, yes, they're on the line. And unfortunately, it's your tax money that's on the line. But that's why, like, it's not a mystery. It's because that's who partaked in that crime. But I haven't forgot those things. I'm not a Democrat. I wouldn't vote for Biden. I never vote for the person who said Black people are super predators. I don't feel attached to the Democratic Party. Now, I have eyes. I will vote anyway for the right person. If a Democrat steps up and they're doing amazing things, they have my vote. But if they don't, I'm not tied to the Democratic Party because that's the party of our ancestors. If we were to be honest, it was Republicans that I hate to say freed the slaves because after everyone we talked about, but Abraham Lincoln was a part of the Republican Party. It was the Republican Party who sent the Union Army down. Now, they did a lot of stuff, and it's not the same Republican Party. So I'm not here to argue stuff, for parties. But I'm saying I don't feel tied to generational commitment to the Democratic Party. I feel personally like there are some very dangerous things happening in the Democratic Party. I feel like our children are under attack. I could not vote
Mm,
for people who seem to be obsessed with separating me from my child.
mm,
I couldn't do it. I cannot be committed to people who don't believe that a nuclear family is important. Now, are all families nuclear families? No, that's not my business. But to come to the conclusion where there's no value in that when family is the center of community is concerning to me because it absolutely the human brain has boundaries. We are so far outside of those boundaries that we see a total collapse of mental health in the United States of America. I hold the Democratic Party's values partly responsible for that. Everything I just talked to you about, there's somebody that could change that we voted for, whether no matter what party they're in. Somebody could work to change that. How did we get here? Because no matter what people argue, the Democrats have been in power a long time. There was a stint where there was a Republican president, but before that, the Democrats were in power for a long time. Come
Mhm.
on.
I agree.
That's all. I mean, I don't really have to say a lot about it. I saw that and I was like, hold people accountable. Gavin Newsom needs to come forth and say, I wasted somebody's time for 2 years to do a study so that we can get to this
Yep.
point where I'm not going to acknowledge any of that data. Or I'm grateful she did the study because now, as soon as we have X amount of dollars, we will move this forward. In fact, I make a motion to change this bill. Let's pass this bill pending the funding coming in or whatever it is that he needed to do as the mayor. I find myself in a position where
Covered.
a couple of years ago I was at a meeting in San Francisco, and this is when Gavin Newsom was being recalled. It's a meeting of Black people, and they were talking about the conversation was, how we can go out and get young people involved so that they can support Gavin because Gavin, we know who Gavin is. And I was like, yes, like I was in San Francisco when he was on the board, when he was the mayor, now he's the governor. Like, what exactly has he done for me and us? Like, what exactly? I mean, specifically, like, yeah, he a liberal dude, so he might change some things in liberal ways. But what did that look like? I am not stomping no pavement to get no new young person to vote for their demise. I could talk more about that, Rolanda. I'm super interested in foreign affairs, in the economy, and I love politics. I am just clear on the things that I'm not going to do anymore. And I grew up in a diehard Democrat, man. My grandfather was a longshoreman, local 10. I grew up scared for my life if I would cross a picket line. Like I grew up, and I'm happy. I'm happy about that, but I also have eyes. And I can
Mm.
see a shift in the culture and the values of our
Mm-hmm.
of our country that is not for me something that is productive for young people. And I just want adults to be honest about that. For example, this is an off the wall example, but this is something I'm talking about. Like, we'll talk about rap music. I grew up in rap music. I like rap music. I grew up under dysfunctional rap music. I'm grown enough to say it ain't art. I'm in a conversation with somebody and we talking about some music, calling us a bunch of bees and hoes and all of that, and then somebody want to say, but it's art. How? What is wrong with you? This music should not be on the radio. Am I saying we didn't listen to it? No. Am I saying if Too Short
Um,
come on right now, I might have to excuse myself because I know every lyric. That does not make me a person who will get on here and say his music is valuable. His music is destructive, and it was part of an era that I came up in, and it should
right.
never be played on the radio. It's unhealthy for children. I grew up with NWA. I grew up all of that, so I'm not. My hands ain't clean, but I still have enough respect for young people to say this is not for your. This is not for you. But I had talked to Black people in an argument. They told me it was art. How? See, that's what I'm saying. Some of this is us.
Yeah. No, you're right, Jay. You're right. You're right. I just okay, okay. One more question, Jay. So here's the other thing. Do you think sometimes this reparation thing gets a little convoluted with people who are not descendants of people who were enslaved? Because I find when I look at Roland Martin, he's from Haiti. When I look at Joy Reid, she's from some part in Africa or something. Most of these people are like first generation, like but they are the benefactors of all of that marching because they wasn't they people wasn't out there marching. They were just getting to America. Do you think that's even with this thing with the presidential thing? Some of those talking point people are folks who weren't necessarily taking it for the team, weren't doing anything during the crack era to help, or even after to help us get our families back together, to be of service in the community. These are not those people. These are the people who walk through the door. And now they want to say, well, this is why we're doing this. Like, do you think this is a problem?
I think that places that talked about reparations did a great job in the writing. Like I know in San Francisco and I believe in California, it was very specific. When they talked about who would be awarded reparations, there had to be a connection to someone that who was enslaved here. And so I think as long as people can say whatever they want to say, but as long as people, we stay on top of what is in the bill and what is in the wording, that's really what matters. I mean, I think Black people who are descendants of enslaved people have so much to work out within ourselves. I mean, the amount of colorism and argument we have about who is Black and who ain't Black, and we have so much to work with. They know they Black. They know they're not American, but I can imagine at they house, because I think Joy Reid is Haitian as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Is she Haitian?
I thought
Is she?
she was, but maybe
I'm
it's
not
the
sure.
White House, the that
Yeah,
lady
she
who's
is. She is.
there.
The one that's
Yeah,
the
I thought
press
Joy
secretary.
Reid
She
was
like,
too. And I feel like these are people who come from Black countries who know they're Black. And they did not have the same experience. I mean, I started the presentation saying, look at me. On any given day, I got to argue if I'm Black. Damn, my grandmother was jet Black. My grandpa was jet Black. My people from New Orleans. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just, it's hard. It's difficult. And it takes, like, I had, thank God for my dad who put something in me where it's like you say whatever you want to say. I'm very clear on what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm doing. But I'm just for us, we have so much work to do around that. Like I every time I think I always for some reason I'm an optimist and I always think that we made so much progress. And then I go online and I see something so stupid. I was this morning I went on TikTok. I will stay on TikTok for 30 minutes. This is me. And I read, is it Ice Spice? I think her name Ice Spice. I don't One Spice. Um, she didn't lost like a kabillion zillion followers because she said some stuff about dark skinned people and she like looked like me. She weird looking though, but she looked like me. But I felt like, and then they said the person who told on her was like her best friend who dark skinned, and I was
oh,
like, where
oh,
do we like where do we get this from? Like,
but
why?
but but Jay, I feel like until we really have that real conversation, because I keep thinking we want to get to the end of shit without going through shit. Like for instance, I mean, shit, I'm in the middle, right? But I also feel like we'll be acting like we are all having the same experience, and we are definitely not. And it's okay to say, I could tell you the experience that Londa's having, but this sister over here who's clearly Black, her shit may be different, and it's okay for her to tell her story without me acting like I have to be your representative because historically, lighter skinned people were the representatives. Like we knew that white people, that's why it's fair skin, they have a fair shot of being respected, of getting their needs met. Well, we act like that dark skinned group don't even have the right to say what the fuck their experiences have been. And I feel like that's the tough
Mm-hmm.
war that we can't even have a discussion on because some of us would, you're not one of those people, Javon, but some of us are guilty of doing colorism for real. And then we're gonna get embarrassed like that's white supremacy. No, that's your ass. That's you doing colorism. I worked for a woman for
Mm-hmm.
25 years that was a straight colorist. So it's kind of like that shit
But
hurts.
that's why I
And then
think
that's what
we
sometimes
got
when
to
I
do
see
that work.
yeah, I agree. I agree. That's why when I see like Joy Reid, when I see the one lady who's the press secretary, notice how they look. Notice what side they standing on.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
normally they wouldn't have that job
Absolutely.
historically.
That's why I said they come in, and a lot of times, they come in as other immigrants, not really having a great respect for us and the work that our ancestors did. So
But
I
then,
just feel like
then,
here's the thing. Like I am happy that I accept black people for being black people, but I'm gonna need you to just do black people stuff. It's just like I have that my condition is I'm gonna need you to do black people stuff. And like I said, I sometimes I read stuff and it makes me sad because in any given day you can read stuff about like light skinned people are this, dark skinned people are this. I'm like, this is why we can't make no progress. We have no respect. Like, no respect. That's what I'm just so grateful that I started with the picture of my grandmother and I got to have a great experience and have appreciation and value for the experience. And I can say, like, I look at Joy Reid and she black. You know what I mean? I look at the other one, Jean Pierre. She's black. She not there's an experience that African Americans have had that they haven't had. Now they did have an experience, right? Like there was brutal slavery in the Caribbean, so it's not like they didn't go through anything, but they weren't here. This argument that's happening is an argument in the United States about what happened to African Americans. Now Haiti went through a revolution and a brutal revolution, and they got their freedom. And I mean, I know we could say a lot about that, but that experience is not this experience, and that's why I say we just have to, and we have to remember this in all ways because sometimes we're driven by emotions. You can say whatever you want to say. I'm gonna need that paper to be very clear as long as the law passes and the explanation is
yeah,
clear, it don't matter how you feel or what
yeah,
about your feelings. And it's
I agree.
important that the people who did do the work get these reparations. We won't win here. And here's the thing: like black immigrants aren't even loved like other immigrants. So you be them messed us up when you ain't gonna get nothing no way because it's just they not even.
I would
We
say
talk about that all the time. Like the Haitians can't even get across the border.
they show the hell can't. But yeah, I think also like that'd be like me and you going to Haiti and jump into their experience and say, this is what we need to do. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You just player. You from the US. We wouldn't do that though, Javon. We wouldn't jump in and be like, what we doing? And it'd be like, wait, you ain't even, dude, you just got your ass here. Like, like we really wouldn't do that. Like for real. But I feel like there's a level of respect. Even when I'm in, the Caribbean or Africa, I go, I take a part of the experience, but sometimes I feel very African American, and I'm so okay with that. Not in an arrogant way, but it's like, yeah, we not, and a man beat my ass no stick. That's not gonna work because I'm going to jail.
Cultural
That
differences.
I mean, look, they were showing a video of some man beating the hell out of a woman. This is over in the Middle East somewhere, and I was just like, did she just? I mean, then the other man got off the horse and helped him beat her, and I was like, what the? But that ain't my culture. We don't,
Mhm.
girl, we be
Mhm.
going to jail for real. Like we really be like, girl, I'm in the jail and killed this man and his friends. Like, like it's just and I think we have a hard time respecting our lineages.
Mhm.
Well, I think we have a
Mhm.
hard time with that. You know what
Yeah,
I'm
they're gonna have to sit this one out,
saying? I
and
don't
then
think
we
they
gonna have to
can
figure
because I
out how
feel
not to
like
fight about it. You know what I mean? We just, I. That's why I think I love that it's like, hey, if you can prove this, then you good. Because if we didn't have that, we would fight to the death, just between ourselves.
so. Look, I got to say this to you. So I do my classes. I'm in a particular district because I do a lot of classes, and probably like a third of the girls are mixed in my class. And
Hmm.
so I do think some of the girls they always say, "No, my dad's like half black." Like, if the girls is cool with you, I'm cool. So one girl came up to me today. This always happens to me, and she was like, "I want to join your group." And I was like, "Well," she said, "No." She said, "The truth of the matter is, Miss Rowe, right?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "My mother is Samoan, and then my daddy is black." And she said, "The truth of the matter is, I don't know what the black part is." And so I either get girls like that or I mean, that are mixed, or I get girls who are mixed thinking the whole thing is about them. And
Hmm.
I like that's not what I'm doing in here. Like you going like wrong class. And
Yeah,
then they
that's
used to
that rap. That's art.
huh?
That's that rap. That's art.
Right, you know what I'm
Creating
saying?
that.
But she was so honest in saying, I know I'm mixed with black, but I don't really know what that means. And I feel like
Mhm.
that's so because we'll be seeing people like, oh, I'm really black because that's like saying I really have a tattoo. It's like no, 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 no. What does that mean? Like,
Mhm.
what does that mean? Like, there's some stuff we be like, I can meet somebody and be like, no, they really black. No, for real. Like, I know they look like that, but they black. Like, we
Mhm.
can tell. You can just be like, no, that person, that I bet you she black. And then she'll, oh yeah, I'm black, even though they look like something else. And then there are times it's like, girl, you just saying that, but you don't have a clue, and that's okay because I don't even know where you really get to learn about being black and what things you pick and choose to share with somebody that's like that.
Mhm.
Depending on whether your mama's crazy or not,
Mhm.
your daddy crazy or not. Like, you know what I'm saying? It depends on what they wish. Because sometimes we're passing out things that's not healthy, even if you black. You
True
know what I'm
that.
saying?
True. And that, and but the same, right? Like, because so do other groups. They pass down things that aren't healthy in their community, and they have, see, that's one of those challenges. That's one of the reasons why that African American experience was different, right? Because the things, the dysfunctional things that we pass down, we sometimes create it because of dysfunction, right? Like, it's not an attachment to Africa. That's why you could be
I get
there
it.
and be like, man, culturally, I feel different because of that
Yeah,
disconnection. So when you look at Joy Reid or one of them, when they're coming, they're still coming connected to their culture and
yeah,
things like, and we're not. It is, that's an interesting question that will probably be dead if it ever gets answered. It's like, what is it like to be African American? Like, what is it like to be black people in America that descended from enslaved people? I mean, there's a culture because it was made by our people as they were overcoming everything that was being done to, and that's different. That's why
yeah.
it's different. That's why it's hard to coin what it's like to be African
That's real talk.
American. That's why I feel like Michelle Obama and Barack Obama are different people. Like, if we was at their house, it would probably be two different conversations and some of the same conversations because that
I
DNA
get that.
going down through Michelle is a little bit different.
That's real
I,
talk.
I don't I
No,
don't I mean,
I
I
get
feel
that.
like the sister that's Samoan and black. Samoan, if you was on the spectrum of black, the Samoan part was getting pretty close. I was laughing when I worked at Rams because we have a program for Samoans, and there was somebody who was challenged with that program, and I was like, girl, whenever you look at the public housing in San Francisco, the Samoans was always there. They was a part of that culture, and they, a lot of them blended. My friend
Right.
Cynthia, her children's father is Samoan, so she'll be fine. The other ones,
No, I just noticed those are the two distinct kind of girls sometimes I'll be having when I have girls who are like that. And I just feel like because some of that stuff is the dysfunction coming from their households. You understand what I'm saying? The other
yeah,
part is I've been with some Africans who would tell you like I'll be sharing like this African American experience, this descendant of enslaved people, whatever, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, because when I got here, I had a problem with my job and I sued them." And I said, "How do you think you were able to sue them? If you had showed up here in 1952 with that bullshit, you'd have been swinging from a tree.
mm-hmm,
But you get to do that because you're here because of some sacrifices that happened. Now you showed up and now you can sue the person for not giving you whatever you deserved. I get it. But you don't
mm-hmm,
even know that benefit didn't come because you were that great. It came because a lot of sacrifices that people had to fight for and laws and stuff that we got put in place that you can even hire an attorney that would take your case to help you
mm-hmm.
sue the state and you got paid.
Yeah, and that's across the board. You know, that's across the
Yeah.
board. Like, when whoever is getting those rights, like, somebody paid a price,
Yeah. I just thought that was interesting. I
and
was like,
they
wow,
don't
like,
exist. I'm gonna say, when you come to America, the reward is very different than when you go to other places. And so, I went to medical school in Mexico, and when I went to Mexico, my experience as an immigrant was very different than the experience that Mexicans or others might have when they come here. And it wasn't a bad experience. It just costed me a lot. I was thinking about, I was just talking to Fitz the other day about how difficult it is, like, to live in a country that doesn't speak your language. Like, English is not their language. And but when I called somebody, nobody said press 2 if you want to speak English. You know what I mean? Or nobody, I mean, I had to overpay for my visa. I was overcharged for a lot of
I,
things. Like, there was no one making it easier for me. I couldn't do a lot of things because I wasn't a citizen. And so I think that another thing is that when we do go places, the expectation of how we integrate is a little bit different than the expectation when people come to America.
agree. I agree.
I mean, you
Yeah,
have access to a lot of different things.
they accommodate you a lot. And funny in today's world, but I bet you if you showed up here in 1952,
Yeah,
like
they wouldn't give that.
we didn't do well. Why y'all ain't speaking English? Like sometimes you still have those relics around being upset. Why is this in Spanish? Why? Because the people here, some of them speak Spanish, but they be like, this is America. Speak English. Like
Mhm.
some people still would say that, even though they didn't stole the place from somebody, but still. So I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. Like I feel like at some point we have to do the work so that we can have mutual respect for whatever the experience is.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know what I mean? But it seems like we don't do that.
Yeah, I think that was my message. I mean, I feel like at this point in my life, I've had to really embrace the do for self message, like, which is how I ended up on a farm. It's kind
Right.
of like, I know no one's coming for me. I also know that at this point, people are joining with people who have values,
I agree.
and so whereas we might have been really, really attached to color before, sometimes that's not a safe place for you. And
Mm.
so, it's like, where does the value match? Where can I put my, if I'm not homeschooling, where can I put my grandbaby in school where she'll be safe as far as what is taught to her or what is done at school? Or, you know what I mean? Like, what I feel like there's maybe a little bit of a value separation. I can't wait for anybody to grow good food for me to eat, or to, like, I can't wait for anybody to just do some of the things that I'm trying to do now for a better life. And I think that we more of us have to get together on that value system. Like, more like, as I'm talking to you, I know we talk about things like this all the time. Like, how do we do this, or how do we do that? How do we bring health and accountability back to us so that we can be part of change, part of progress? Like, what does progress even, we hear so much about progressive stuff. When I say safe for my grandbabies, I mean, I want my grandbabies to go to a school system where the school system feels like I deserve to be a part of what is happening in her life. Oh, your grandbaby is off today. Let me give you a call so you can come down here and work with us to figure out what's going on. I find that, today the school district, or the schools, one of their greatest goals is to separate your child from you. Your child can go to school and do dang near anything. We have these clinics in the schools, and those clinics work with your child to do things that you don't know about. I
Mm.
think that that's very unsafe, especially when I don't know your value system. Like, I don't want my child vaccinated. Why do you think you can do it at school? I don't want my grandbaby to be, in California, there's a law. The law in California is 12 years old. So at 12 years old, you can have birth control options and abortion options and reproductive options, basically, without your parent knowing. No
Really?
child at 12 years old should be having sex. No child.
I agree.
Why are you making a way for my child to do it easy? If you are, you should be sneaking. Now they'll say, oh, well, there are some children who are being molested or are victims of incest. Well, I think we should come up with systems to help those children, because they do exist. But you don't blanket a law and bring all 12-year-olds into this system where you pumping birth control in them, when anybody who works in reproductive health knows that a 12-year-old is not a girl. A 12-year-old girl is not going to ask a boy to wear a condom. She don't have the strength to do that. She's not going to make sure it happens, nor is she going to take a birth control pill every day. So then you're going to pump her up with Depo and all of the things that come with that because she's too irresponsible to take a pill every day, yet not too irresponsible to be having sex. Because she's not going to tell a boy to put a condom on. But that's what you can expect at school.
Wow, that's true.
I support people who say I send my children to school for reading, writing, and arithmetic. I support that. I didn't think I would, but I definitely support. I don't need you to go outside of that. I don't need you to teach Black history. Nobody. I need you to teach whatever you're gonna teach that's gonna help them get it. I'll take it from there. Hell, when I grew up, all the people were angry all the time. They said Black people never get to learn the truth about themselves at school. They'll never learn their own history. They don't never learn the real history. And then when it got said, well, we're not going to teach Black history, then Black people started losing their mind. I was so confused. Like, but you said we never learned the truth. But this is a win. Now we can teach in community or teach at home so our
You know
children can
what?
get the truth.
You know what? But I think that's what makes me feel confused about this election. Like when you tell black people how bad something's gonna be for you, but you've been living in this shit being bad this whole time. Like it's the shit never changed for us. So you trying to convince me this is gonna be horrible. No, you're really talking about what's gonna be for you. Because if you know how I live, I'm already under horrible conditions. You keep thinking that you know what my condition is, but you can never live. You can never walk around in my skin and be me. You know what I'm saying? But it's like a mind trick. Like how you gonna convince black people of something that's gonna be bad for them? But we already living in that. Have you ever driven by black? Have you ever tried to get a job by black? Have you ever shopped while you was black? You ever just walk down the street as a black person? I mean, how you gonna tell me what something's gonna be in my reality when I'm already living in that reality? Been living. Didn't you see the whole PowerPoint you just did? You didn't see all the things that y'all was in the one thing, you started another thing. That was the crazy part. We're gonna let y'all be free, but we're gonna come up with sharecropping. We gonna we need free labor. We're gonna do convict leasing, or we gonna stop that in 1971. I'm just saying, and then 1971 in the summer, y'all come up with massacre. I'm just saying, like it's like it never stops. So quit acting like this is an experience like that used to happen. For black people, it's one long ass continuous
Mm,
event
mm.
that never stops. So who are you convincing? And why are you mad when I don't believe it? Because I live it. I
But
see
what's
how hard
killing
black
me is other
people have.
Black people doing that. Other
But
Black people shaming
that's
Black
the
people because of how they want to vote.
that's the overseer though. That's how I know we participated in slavery. That's how I know that. Because these people are so willingly, you know. What's that one quote? We wear the mask that grins and lies, or like something like this. About he said, but some of y'all can't wait to put the mask on. Some people did that to survive. Y'all do that like that's support. That's your culture. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what cracked me up. Not to mention, you don't feel like you have to address me and my concerns. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, hell, usually the politicians, especially white men, they'll just lie to your face. We'll take that because we've been taking it all this time, right? Most of the thing they gotta give us no explanation. That's disrespectful as shit. Like you can't
Wow.
even say to me like, you know, you gonna sign something. You can sign the shit now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not telling people who to vote for. I'm just saying. I think this is dangerous times when you can't even say your opinion, and that's how you really create revolt and revolution. When you start shutting people down, people will revolt. They'll start
But
hooking
they
up with
don't do that to other people. It's an
art.
expectation that other people can vote however they vote. But when it comes to our community, it's like, no, you only have one way to vote, and it's the way we tell you to vote. That's why I get excited when I be like, I'm not doing that at all.
Okay, you remember we was in Detroit. We went to the damn movies to see. Remember, I was talking the whole time. It was like
Oh, the purge.
the purge. And the thing that got on my nerves the most as with everybody killing everybody because it's the purge, except for black people got to be responsible the way that they kill people. I was like, we can't even be like everybody else and kill people like they were doing in the movie. I'm not saying kill anybody. I'm just saying they kill them. This is the purge. Get to us though, and the person who's been horrible to us, we gotta be. See, to me that was so subliminal, Javon. But except it was blatant. It was like, wow, we gotta. I thought we was all in the purge.
Mm-hmm. I
Why
remember
the rules
that.
different? Why the rules different for me? I was so heated. Remember, I said I can't watch this shit. Like, cause I just hate like you tell us like we like everybody else until we start, activating like we everybody. Then you're like, and it's like, well, didn't you say we like everybody else? But no, there's rules for you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what the whole lesson that we're getting as a people, for those of us who identify as us, that there's always a different set of rules for you. And don't you forget it.
Yeah.
That's what we told your parents. That's why you can't have people cut you off from your elders, because your elders will tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes elders will say stuff, and I'll be like, "Ah, I want this to be true. Wouldn't it be true?" You'd be like, God damn. But they was here before. They survived these people.
Mm-hmm.
They survived them. So they already know, player. They already know. We keep thinking we know something that they don't know.
Well, we being trained to do that. That's part of what I said about the danger of the school system and everything now. It is happening to us, right? Like you just take your child to school and that's happening. Our children are being groomed to be separate from us because we don't know. We don't know. We don't need to know. We not supportive. We don't I am the one that's going to be with my child good or bad. I remember having a conversation. I said, yes, if my child gets pregnant at 14 or 15, I am going to be upset and I have that right. Right? I'm raising this child. But at the end of the day, it will be me and my child who figure out next moves, not you. I'm going to be stuck with the decision for the rest of my life, our life, right? Like it's me. I'm her ally. I have her best interest. So
Mm,
that separation is happening and we don't even know it because it's happening in secret wherever we take our children. I have my little standard now is if I can't leave my child with you safely, then you're my enemy. If I run to the bathroom or to the cafeteria and my child tell you something and you feel like you can't tell me but we came together, we ain't cool no more.
mm. Well, Jay, I thank you for spending this time with me on this Friday night, giving us some wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Because I do think we have to expand this thing and looking at it from our mental health. Like, I just felt like even when they were waiting for that vote, I felt to myself, "Man, it's just so blatantly disrespectful. All them black people were down there waiting for that vote, and then the one man came by and mocked them. I said, look at this fool. Like
Who was that?
some caucus member. I just thought to myself, this is a different day because it couldn't have been 1980 and 9. I'm just saying. Like it's a time where people just didn't do shit because you would have to walk outside. Like
Let's
just
do
saying.
it.
So
We
it's
need.
just so disrespectful. To me, it's just the ultimate disrespect that I think I know for me I struggle with. It's so blatant because I'm a student of history. I know my ancestors. They shared. I mean, elders, ancestors shared their story. So it's kind of like, how can we still be going through this in 2024? My grandmother's still there. My grandmother is 98. My dad's mother, 98. So don't tell me something was along. She was born 1924,
Yeah, I was
something
gonna
like
say,
that.
think of her on that timeline.
Yeah, I'm like, give me a break. Like y'all really doing too much. Really, you are. Like I just.
Mm-hmm.
Or 1926. She was born 1926, not 24, 26. So
We
anyway,
was on the
Davon,
same.
thank you so much for spending time with me. That was an awesome PowerPoint. I just feel like we need a refresher, and seeing what our ancestors have been through. And I want you to enjoy your Friday night. Don't hang up. All right, y'all. See y'all again soon.